Let me say,
Blog
guys.
Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, across this great country. If it's Tuesday, it's going to be that Cleveland show, the American Sports History Podcast, hosted by my brother, my mentor, my friend, Peter Ray. 347-205-9631 is the call-in number. Yours truly, Mark Mancini here, producing it. You can also email at mancinisports@yahoo.com. Without further ado, let me give him the red carpet, the podium, and the mic. Peter, first of all, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? Third of all, you got a great guest tonight, my friend.
Oh, hi, Mark. I'll try to remember your three questions here. I'm doing well, and let's see. Oh, I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, R-E-A, and I have a website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. You're absolutely right. We have a tremendous guest tonight with a wealth of experience and good character. Most important thing. He went to high school in Alhambra, California, studied at Los Angeles College and Utah State University. He currently lives in Price, Utah. Our guest tonight was a college basketball coach for 20 years, and I'm sure he has a lot of interesting things to say. It's an honor and a privilege to have on American Sports History, Coach Curtis Condie.
Peter, thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just thanks so much for having me on.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. You know, to me, I've had some involvement with coaching with kids, and the fact that you're a Mormon, the Church of Latter-day Saints, is always an honor to talk with folks from that church, because for me, God's the most important reality, and of course. Mormons know the importance of character, and you're a coach. You've been a college basketball coach, and of course, having coaches with good character. Anyone who's in a position of leadership, especially with young people, so important to have good character. Now, first of all, Coach Condie, can you tell us about? Can you tell our listeners the different colleges where you are a college basketball coach?
Okay, so I was on the staff. My first coaching job in college, I guess you could say, was at Utah State University at my alma mater. Then I moved on to be a high school coach at a couple different places. Then I got on at Snow College, a junior college in Utah. Then I got on at Northern Arizona University. And then I got a phone call from a Coach Dick Hunsaker, who people in the Midwest might know from his days at Ball State. He took over at Utah Valley State College, which is now called Utah Valley University. And this was a unique situation. They were going from junior college to Division I. So we were the first year there, we would be junior college, and then we would transfer to Division I. So I did that because nobody else, I think, could have that on their resume. So I went and did that at Utah Valley State College. Then took a head coaching job down in Laredo, Texas, at a Division II school, NCAA Division II school called Texas A&M International University. Was there for a season. Then a good friend of mine got the job at Louisiana Tech University, Kerry Rupp, and he asked me to come be his assistant. So I went there. And then when time was up at Louisiana Tech, I ended up the head coach at Central Wyoming College. Then my former boss at Utah Valley, Dick Hunsaker, asked me to come back, and now the school's name was changed to Utah Valley University, and went there. And in our first year in the Western Athletic Conference, we actually won the regular season. And we unfortunately lost in the conference tournament. Our point guard broke his hand. And then so we ended up playing in the NIT. And then after that, my boss resigned. A new coaching staff came in. So I was looking for a spot and spent a couple months at a place called Salt Lake Community College and I recruited a team that ended up the national championship, but I left there and went to Wasatch Academy to bring a small little high school that was in a small town in Utah. Wanted to play in the national scene, and then that first year we were ranked in the top 15, and we in fact beat the number one team in the country on their home floor, La Lemure, which is in Indiana, and we're the only team in the last 15 years that's won on their court. So that was a big accomplishment. But I was there for 3 years, and then I went back to Utah to get in the college level. I went to the junior college level to Utah State University Eastern, used to be known as the College of Eastern Utah, and you know, thanks to some budget cuts, I'm no longer there. But that's all right. We'll find another spot here real soon. But that's all the colleges basically I've been to.
Well, that's quite a journey that you've been on. Now the thing, I find it a fascinating topic. There's a lot of debate on coaching, and of course, over the years, the country, culture changes, and the ideas of coaching changes. What's your general philosophy of coaching?
Well, I think you have to first off, be honest. I think that's the biggest thing, is to be honest. And remember, you're there to, unfortunately, you got to win ball games. People say, oh, you got to have great character and all this, but you got to win ball games. So you got to recruit,
Right.
you got to recruit. So, but the biggest thing is, I think, just being honest and helping young men become better human beings. But so there's the off the court philosophy, and then there's on the court philosophy. But also the other thing is making sure that, if you're going to make them be better human beings, they're there to go to class. They're there to get their degree.
Do you have? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, so go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking of the. You hear people talk about star treatment. Of course, in college, you're not dealing with guys making a ton of money and being real famous. But did you ever have that issue of you had the star player who was like really, really good, and where you would tend to treat him a little bit different?
Well, I think here's the thing with any team. You need to treat everybody the same. But the other thing you have to remember is everybody comes from a different background. Everybody comes from a different home. Unless you're coaching, two young men that are related to one another, that are brothers. So you got to treat them the same, but because they come from different backgrounds, in a way you have to treat them differently. You've got to get to know them and understand them and understand what makes them tick and understand what they need to help them. I was fortunate enough to coach 3 guys that played in the NBA. One at my first stint at Utah Valley, Ronnie Price, who got 13 years in the NBA with Sacramento, the Jazz, Phoenix, Portland, the Lakers, and then ended up at OKC. Then at Louisiana Tech, Magnum role. Magnum was drafted by OKC, and 15 minutes later he was traded to Indianapolis, and he got cut. The last guy cut at camp there, but then he ended up, after playing a year or a part of the season in the D League, which is now the G League, then he ended up on Atlanta's roster. And then my first one, though, was Jackson Broman, who I recruited to Snow College, coached him there before he went on to play for the guy that gave me my first start in college at Utah State, and then he was at Iowa State, Larry Stacey. Jackson was all Big 12 there, and Jackson got drafted by the Bulls, and 20 minutes later was traded to Phoenix, and 20 games into that year he was traded to New Orleans, the Hornets, and then he played there and then he was, then the Katrina hit and he went to OKC, but he broke his wrist against his hometown Jazz, and so he was in the league for 2 years, but then he ended up playing overseas for another 10.
So you during the off season you do a lot of recruiting.
Yes. No, I mean you're recruiting 365 days a year, and the good schools know what they're looking down the road. They're looking at freshmen. They're looking at sophomores. Of course, you have to stay within the rules when you can contact them, but you start to evaluate them. You start to see where you have a connection with somebody, because it's like anything. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Who can help you get the young man? Because the biggest thing is you don't want to break any rules.
And so these are high school kids you're recruiting.
Right, high school, junior college, something like that. What people don't understand in college basketball is around Christmas time, right after Christmas time, there's usually a meeting. And the head coach is like, hey, this guy's not cutting it. Or this guy, is doing really well. And, and the guys that aren't cutting it, you got to start thinking, okay, are we going to replace them? Are we going to stay with them? And those conversations take place, if that makes sense.
Right.
And you're always constantly looking for who's coming your way, or who can you get, and you've got a depth chart, and you've got a depth chart with classes, as far as seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen, and do you think, okay, are we going to go the JC route? And if you're in Utah, then you're playing with the fact that you're dealing with kids that are going to go on LDS church missions. So you got to put that in the equation as well.
So you're looking for guys who might transfer during the school year from other college or junior college?
I'll tell you what happens. What happens is these kids will get on the phone with their AAU coach, and their AAU coach will call up a few colleges and say, hey, this kid's looking to leave. Are you interested? And that's what's going on. That's why you have so many transfers. What was there, like just over 800 this year? And they're saying that they're going to pass the rule to where you don't have to sit out next year. And I'll tell you, it's really interesting what's taken place last week with the NCAA, with them, saying that the kids from the class of 2021 can stick around, because that's all fine and dandy for the P5 schools because they can afford it. But I can tell you this much. I don't know how many Big West, Big Sky, Ohio Valley, Southland, Horizon, American East, the SWAC, the MEAC, how many of those conferences schools can afford 17 to 18 kids on scholarship? So it'll be really interesting to see, if you're a coach, do you want to keep around a senior for a fifth year because he already knows everything, or do you want to bring in a freshman? Because the really good coaches are worried about the next year. They want to make sure they're good for the next year, not down the road at that level. I don't know. Does that make sense? Sure.
Well, there's the guys that can only be there for 4 years, or like you said, maybe 5. So there's a lot of turnover, and of course that's, I guess, how it is in all sports. Do you, I don't know much about I was just thinking about, you hear these stories of these scouts or recruiting, going to the home of the player and having a nice meal and charming the parents. Did you have those experiences where you had a nice home cooked meal in the home of the?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
I've had some great meals now. There's been some great. I've got to meet a lot of great people along this way. There's some great people here in this country, and there's some great moms that can cook. So yeah, no, there's some good cooking going on. And just great people, And the thing is you learn a lot about a young man when you see him with his family, because
right.
You see, how does he treat his mother? Because when I was a head coach at the junior college level, I saw a young man just treat his mom in the hallway of a high school gym at an AAU tournament. And I could have had the young man. And I was like, nope, I'm done, because I didn't like the way he treated his mother. You know, it was just so disrespectful. And I just told the AAU coach, I said, sorry, I'm not interested.
Well, have you had the issue of talented players and how much problems with character or behavior you would tolerate because of their tremendous talent?
You know, I've been fortunate enough that I didn't have to deal with that. But then again, that might be why I'm unemployed right now. You know, so, you know, those things do come into play. But I haven't, you know, with those NBA players, you know, it was real interesting. When I got a phone call on Jackson, he was the first one to be drafted that I coached. And I made the statement about the young man's character. And, you know, Jackson wasn't a saint, but I knew how loyal he was, and I knew how well he treated me and my family. And I had younger kids at the time, and I told the NBA scout, I said, listen, Jackson's a little bit of a character and all that, but I would allow Jackson to babysit my kids. If I needed a babysitter, Jackson would do it, and I would have no problems. Because I know when it came time to take care of my family, Jackson would be that way. And that goes for, I was able to make that statement about all three guys that were, you know, that went to the NBA. So, you know, you have to remember, college basketball coaches, their jobs depend on anywhere from 19 to 24-year-olds. But for the majority, it's 19 to 22-year-olds that are away from home for the first time. So you can imagine, you know, some of the things that go on. But here's the thing. The majority of the time, if kids that get in trouble on a college campus, they're not athletes. But because they're an athlete, they get put on the front page. You know, English student that gets in trouble on a college campus, their picture's not on the front page. So, I don't know.
Do you find, basically from what I've known or what I've heard, there's just a tremendous amount of work involved in being a coach at really any level or anywhere at college and above, and especially if you're having your recruiting and then the pressure to win and then you're preparing for games. And now here you have a family, you have a wife and kids, and how, you know, from what I understand, it sounds like you could there's no end to how much work you could do, how much time you could spend on the job. And so how have you dealt with, you know, having, you know, trying to, you know, since you have a wife and kids and you need to have a healthy lifestyle, and how have you dealt with that whole issue of fighting the urge to just work all the time and then neglect everything else?
Well, my number one recruit is my wife, Wendy. She has been amazing. This is our 15th home. We've been married 29 years. We have 4 kids. One of them's my oldest daughter's about to make me a grandpa in April, her and her husband. I've got 2 kids that are married. I've got one that's married that's playing college basketball at Concordia University there in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And he's a junior there. And him and his wife are there. They actually live across the street from Eastern Michigan University. You know, and I've got another one that's in college and then a son that's a senior in high school. They've got to meet a lot of different people and had a great education outside of the classroom because of the people that they've met. But they are, you know, I took the job to come to Utah State University Eastern to be with my oldest son.
Okay.
To be with my oldest son because when I was a Division I coach, I didn't get to see him a whole lot.
Were you his coach?
No, I was an assistant.
Okay.
Wasn't the head coach. So I got to spend that whole entire year with him. Now, he was here with his wife, but I at least got to see him every day and spend quality time with him every day. So that was fun. I will never regret that year with him or wanting to make that move. It just, budget cuts and COVID and all that, and those things happen. But it was a tremendous year to spend the time with him. But like you said, it did take its toll because I was gone for a lot of things. In July, you've got those 20 days where you're allowed out recruiting, and I'm out recruiting and my family's vacationing. So, I missed going to spring training in Tampa and watching the Yankees while I was out recruiting. So those things, just happened. And that was one of the reasons of going to Wasatch Academy, so I could spend some more time with my children as well. But it does take its toll. But the goal of being a head coach, you get to decide your schedule. That's the difference from being a head coach and being an assistant. When you're a head coach, you decide your schedule. You can rearrange practices so you can get to your kids' things.
Now I was just thinking about the pressure that athletes and coaches are under, and you play games and you win and you lose and the stakes are high, and of course losing is part of it, and winning, when you have the pitfalls of both, and but I guess people have the most trouble with losing, and how were you able to move on from tough losses and help the guys, the guys who missed shots or potentially game-winning shots, and how do you help them move on and yourself move on and from failure?
Well, one of the best things is having a family, because when you go home, your kids still love you. The boosters might not love you, but your kids still love you.
Right?
Your kids still love you. Your wife still loves you, and they know that there's a period of, leave dad alone for a little bit. But, the funny thing is when you're an assistant coach, you're not getting home till late because you're breaking down film, you're trying to figure things out, and you're worried, and you're getting ready for the next game. There's kind of a lull when the season ends because there's not another game. But then you're trying to figure out, okay, exactly which kid are we going to take, and we got to sign this kid so we're better and we don't lose our last game. So you do have, when you're a coach and you're dealing with young men, you've also got to make sure that they, you have their well-being in hand. And when they miss a big shot or when they're not playing well, you sit down and you watch film and you talk about what they're going through and what you're going through and figure it out from there.
So yeah, now have you found that time is 20 years is a long time. Has your coaching changed over the years as you have aged and as you've gotten more experience?
Yes. One, I'm a much better coach. When you're young, you think you know it all, and I didn't know squat. So that the other thing is, and then another thing that you do is you do mellow out a little bit. When you're young, there's a little more fire to you, and you learn what's important, what's more important, what's the things to put in perspective, those kind of things.
And what? How do you motivate players who are either discouraged or maybe you think they're not playing, they're not making enough effort overall? How do you motivate players?
Well, it's interesting. Kids usually do things for three reasons. Either they love it, out of duty for it, or fear. And I try not to bring the fear into it, if that makes sense. But I think a lot of it depends on the relationship you have with the young man. Again, relationships are the key in any business, and you want to make sure that those young men, they know that you care about them. I don't know if that makes sense.
So I was a high school history teacher for 22 years, and I've dealt with a lot of kids, and I was a gym teacher. Nothing, no big competition, but I dealt with kids who seemed like they really disliked me from the day I first met them, and so I found that difficult. And did you ever have the issue where you needed to win kids over because maybe they had problems with previous coaches or authority figures?
Oh, actually, when I took over at Wasatch Academy, I took over because their coach passed away. And so it was really hard at first, because this guy was kind of like a father figure to them. And, they just lost, the biggest male figure in their life. And then here comes somebody in that they have no clue, didn't help them get to that school. And, here it comes. And it's the same thing when you take over at another institution for another staff, because those players, most of them, except for the new ones, have been recruited by you. And so, again, you've got to have the ability to win over their relationships. So,
over the years, as your experience as a coach, you had kids from different cultural backgrounds, and how did you help kids get along, overcome these cultural differences? You have all these different kids with different, you might have white kids and from all the various cultural backgrounds, the black kids, same thing, Hispanic kids, and how did you deal with that, helping kids to get along with each other from different backgrounds?
Well, first off, this goes back to what we talked about, treating them all the same. And then when kids know that you actually love and care about them, they'll listen to you. And then you do some team building things. Let them have some fun with one another. That's the biggest thing, is you let them have fun from one another. A great example is we had a young man. When I was at Louisiana Tech, we had a young man from the Bahamas, Magnum Roll, that played in the NBA a little and then played overseas. And his roommate, we put him together with a young man from Idaho. Now, you want to talk about Mutt and Jeff, two people from two different backgrounds. But they were young. They were kids. They got to be roommates, and they're still good friends to this day, even though they come from completely two different, backgrounds. If you saw the movie Napoleon Dynamite of Preston, Idaho, that's where this young man came. And then you got a young man from literally the streets of Nassau, Bahamas. They come from two completely different worlds, but yet they're best buds. They're best friends. They would do anything for one another because they just grew. They had that bond. Good. If you recruit good people and high character, you got a chance to win. And we had the best year in 25 years at Louisiana Tech, our third year there, with these two guys, because they were talented, high character, and just good people.
Have you coached in the March Madness tournament?
I have, unfortunately, I've gotten close, but haven't gotten there.
Are you? What are your career goals at this point?
I would really like to. I'd really like to get a head junior college job or head NAIA job. I think that's more realistic. I think, I interviewed 4 times for Division I head jobs, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen, and that's fine. But, that I really would like a smaller college job, because I think I like that level, and I think I could do some really good things there. But I wouldn't shut down the opportunity to go back to Division I at all.
talking with you tonight and on the phone the other last week, you mentioned during this interview about how it's important to care about the players, and of course that's something that guys talk, probably all coaches talk about, but I'm not sure if they all actually do it because let's face it, they want to win. But talking with you, it's obvious that you do care. You're a caring person, so therefore, it's going to work with you. Now, Coach Condie, we're out of time. Do you have any final words for our listeners?
Hey, just be glad that we got college basketball again, and things are going to go fantastic. And keep wearing the mask just so we can have a season.
Okay, very good. Our guest has been Coach Curtis Condie, 20 years college basketball coach. Best of luck to you in the future and in your career and with your wonderful family. So it's really nice talking to a man of good character and a man who knows a man of God.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, it was an honor and a privilege, and we'll wish you well with everything. Next week, our guest will be Fred Wallen from XM Sirius, former host of Dodger Talk. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Coach Condie.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Okay. Good night.
Thanks.